Thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight. This is a short Ask a Planner session. We're gearing up for our August 3rd work session in front of the Planning Commission to debut to them, not to you members of the public, the proposed revisions for the Land Use and Development Ordinance update for this year. And for those of you who may not have seen the website recently, we've had some movement on some of the legislative sessions, particularly in the wildfire space and the housing space. And as a result, we've had to modify our scope. So this year, we've reduced the scope just a little bit. We're going to leave off the optional uses for farm and forest for next year to couple it with some other things that have moved in that space. And we're going to be pushing out the housing updates and the wildfire updates to 2023. So we've increased the update process to 3 years instead of 2. And this year, we're really just focusing on those procedural chapters. So we've got some questions to answer tonight. You're welcome to enter any questions that you have in the Q&A function or on Facebook Live. You can enter them as a comment. So Isaac's just gearing up here. Isaac, do you want to kick us off with our first series of questions?
Yeah, I can do that.
I can give you a minute too and just talk. So I can talk about one of the questions we received. So some of our savvy residents were cognizant that we had to recently change the Land Use and Development Ordinance update in response to some of the things that are happening at the legislative level after the legislative session. And they wanted to know what had changed with the overall LUDO update. So as I mentioned, we've expanded the project by a year. We've pushed out wildfire and housing updates to 2023. And that's really based on the fact that the state is going to be adopting state wildfire risk maps. And that has a connection with the accessory dwelling unit bill that passed in the legislature this year. So we have to wait for that rulemaking to happen. And that'll happen towards the end of 2022. So that's why we had to push those things out. As I mentioned this year, we've pared down to just focus on those procedural chapters. It's a lot of stuff that is really important, but doesn't have a significant impact on individual property uses or the value of your property. So basically what these updates are is to streamline the ordinance in a way that makes the process of applying for a development permit a lot easier. And that includes revisions to Chapter 2, revisions to Chapter 21, which includes land divisions and road standards. And then we're tackling some environmental protection districts to get them to look more uniform so they're much easier for staff and for the public to read. And then we have the reason that icon for environmental protection districts is green is that in addition to kind of streamlining the format, we have some updates that came out of Wasco County 2040. So these are things that we've already talked about as a community that we need to now make a rule for and put it into the Land Use and Development Ordinance. So most of these edits are really straightforward. Again, they're not super substantive. There's one or two things we've highlighted in the draft where they're optional versus mandatory, and really tried to give you an overview on every revision of what's actually changing, so that you can make some informed decisions if you want to comment or participate in the land use development ordinance update. And I will say one of the things that we talked to the public about several months ago were optional uses in farm and forest zones. We've pushed that work out again into next year. So we'll be revisiting that in 2022, along with a couple other updates. So Isaac, if you want to advance to the next slide, we can show folks what next year's scope looks like. That looks like the wrong slideshow.
Yeah, I think this is not the correct slideshow.
That's not the correct slideshow, no. That looks like the presentation we're giving in August. So next year, we're going to be tackling some military airspace information that we've received a grant from the Department of Defense to do. We've got to do some upstate law related updates to Chapter 19, which is our energy facilities chapter. And as I mentioned, we're going to tackle some of the optional uses for farm and forest zones, along as with some other things. While Isaac's trying to find the correct slideshow, I can move on to the next question that I received. Oh, there it is. So agritourism is part of those updates to farm and forest zones. And we've heard a lot of really great feedback recently about folks interested in agritourism and wanting to participate. And we also did receive a lot of comments about concerns for wildfire. So we want you to continue to submit that feedback. That really helps us. And we have the opportunity to do some more analysis there. If you want to advance to the next slide, we can show folks what we're doing in 2023. So as I mentioned, the ADU bill is really wrapped up in some of the fire work that's going to be happening at the state level next year. So we've decided to couple that with all of the other housing updates that we're going to be making. And we also have some updates coming down the pipe for Environmental Protection District 1, which is flood zones, floodplain, and Environmental Protection District 2, which is landslides. We call it geological hazards in the ordinance. So those things are scheduled to be finished by 2023. So that's why we're going to address that. And then one of the things that we talked about, all the greens indicate things we talked about during Wasco County 2040. One of the last things we did was adopt an eligibility map for destination resorts. And now we need to sit down and make rules as a community. And obviously one of the concerns is wildfire and water. So we can take comments about any of these topics at any time. We're really happy and excited to hear from you. Just know that the work really won't be done until these years. So I'm going to go ahead and answer my next question, and then I'll be quiet and Isaac can take it away with a few more questions that we have from the public. This was there any legislation passed this year that will affect LUDO updates? And I've already kind of spoken about some of the things moving this year at the legislative session, specifically with wildfire. It's not surprising we saw a lot of movement at the state legislature for wildfire because of our really terrible, terrible wildfire season last year. So we have some new provisions to allow for emergency shelters, more grace time for non-conforming uses when there's sort of a hazard situation going on. And then I mentioned that the state wildfire risk maps that are going to be adopted and slated for, I think, June 2022. These things are all tied into the housing conversation again, so that's why we're pushing that off until 2023. And we also know it's really critical. We know citizens are very concerned about wildfire. We're very concerned about wildfire. We're doing a lot of work in conjunction with the LUDO updates. We've also got an update to our community wildfire protection plan that we've also extended the deadline for, to really make sure we're doing the best analysis that we can and using the best available data. So that's where we've seen some things shift. Other legislation that folks might be interested that passed this year. Agricultural buildings now have some more flexibility to allow 25% of the space to be used for personal or incidental use. And that will be changing next year. There are some definitions to renewable energy facilities that have changed that increase the trigger for us kicking it to a review by the Oregon Department of Energy. We don't anticipate or know about any future commercial energy projects. We had a whole series of those several years ago, and we haven't heard or spoken to anybody about any new projects, but that's just something to keep in mind. And then there were a lot of aspirational things in terms of looking at some climate issues and also looking at diversity and equity and inclusion when it comes to citizen involvement. So we don't expect those things to go into rulemaking for a couple of years, but those are things that we're actively watching for and engaging in conversations at the statewide level to make sure we're advocating for the citizens of Wasco County when it comes to land use and development. So Isaac, I don't see any questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any questions here in our Q&A. So if you want to continue with the other questions that we've received from the public, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. So we did have a question come in. So the question was, I own a home in Wasco County outside the city limits of Mosier. I would like to explore the options of renting my place short term through most likely an Airbnb or VRBO, and was wondering what the process was. Do I need a permit and how do I apply? And this was a great question because this has been starting to crop up more and more in the area. So the answer to this is that we currently do not have any rules related to short-term rentals. Therefore, we do not have a way to permit them or prohibit against them. The biggest liability would be for a code compliant, or I'm sorry, a code complaint if a neighbor were to issue like a nuisance complaint about noise or large parties, garbage issues, excessive cars parking, things of that nature. So we don't really have a way to say, yes, go ahead and do it, or no, you cannot do it. And because of that ambiguity, we are working to adopt more clear rules in 2023. So at this time, we are advising property owners to proceed at their own risk. You know, kind of understanding the risk that, you know, your neighbors may not like it, and there's not much protection that we can give against that at this time.
And I'll just add on, we really encourage comments about short-term rentals as soon as possible. So we've already, we have a poll up on that page on the wasco2040.com, which is our land use and development ordinance update. There's you'll see a little sign with a house and then a for sale sign in, or a money sign in front indicating the house is for rent. And if you go on there, you'll find a poll that you can take really quickly. We had conversations about short-term rentals during Wasco County 2040 and made the policy to kind of talk about it when we did this update. So that's what we're doing. We've already received some great comments, so would love to continue to collect those comments over the next year and a half.
And Kelly, did you already talk about the legislation? The other question that came in, or another question, was there any legislation passed this year that will affect the LUDO updates? All right, very good. And I know we had another question come in about solar, and I'm just trying to pull that up real quick.
I can paraphrase it off the top of my head if you can't find it.
Yeah, I've got it here. So the question that came in was, are you planning on updating permit requirements for rooftop solar installations? As is, rooftop installations, even out of the Columbia Gorge scenic area, require a costly and delayed review by the planning department. I would hope that the county was intent on promoting alternative energy production, not make it more difficult or expensive. Thanks. And this is, you know, another thing that we've heard more than once come in since I've been here, so at least in the last year. And we are slated to work on these updates to the energy facility chapter, which is chapter 19, coming up next year in 2022. We do have some direction in the recently updated comprehensive plan that was produced by Wasco County, by the Wasco County community, and was part of the Wasco County 2040 plan. to make residential energy projects a little bit easier for homeowners. But again, as Kelly mentioned earlier, we really need and want to hear any comments or feedback that you, the community, have here on on what you want and what direction you would like us to go with that. So again, this kind of goes back to the more interaction we get from you guys, the better. And Kelly, did you have anything more to add on that?
No, I think that's great. We can talk a little bit about what we are doing this year, and talk a little bit about the upcoming hearings process and the mailer that we're going to be sending. So we have a work session scheduled with the Planning Commission in August at our normal Planning Commission date on the first Tuesday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. That'll be our first opportunity to go before the Planning Commission and discuss the proposed revisions. So staff will be giving presentations that should look really familiar if you've been to the Wasco County 2040 website to look at what we're doing, and give them an opportunity to kind of talk about anything that they would like to revise, and also listen to the public. So that's a great first opportunity to come and talk to the Planning Commission about your concerns. And again, something we've been stressing since we kicked off public involvement and outreach in April is it's a lot of reading material. So we really recommend early participation and early reading of the documents. We've tried to make it easy by providing a one-sheet summary of all the categories of updates. And every revised draft has a sheet that tells you about how it's marked up, so you can understand what the lines and the underscores and the things mean. And then there's a full page that describes kind of page by page what some of the substantive updates are. So it should be really clear what we're actually doing. So that first meeting in August is a great opportunity to come and listen. We're going to be sending out a countywide mailer in August. It's likely going to be a postcard this year. Next year likely will be a lengthier letter. But just saying, hey, come participate. Also letting folks know about the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that we're also doing. And then September 7th is the scheduled hearing date for the formal adoption process for this year's updates. And then we're scheduled to go before the board in October 20th and November 3rd. So we have a whole series of hearings to have to adopt this thing. So lots of opportunities to still participate. But again, want to stress lots of information. So really advise getting a head start on it, because the packets are going to be hundreds of pages long. And Isaac, do you want to kind of tool around and show people where they can look at the revised drafts?
Yeah, that's I was trying to get this pulled up to go along with you while you were talking, but yeah, this is the project website, which is wasco2040.com. This is what we've been trying to promote throughout this this entire process as a way to kind of break these large and dense, complicated things down into more bite-sized and more tangible bits of information. So as Kelly said, each of them have been broken down, and I can actually go back to the new timeline. And this is a good kind of visual representation, as I tried to show in the slideshow a little earlier, exactly what's going on here in 2021. So we click on Chapter 2, which again is kind of outlined by these little graphics there. But each of these pages have their own one-sheet summaries, and I'll just click on this real quickly to kind of show you. It's uploaded as a PDF. So in case you, for whatever reason, do want to print it off and have a physical copy of it, it's available right here. It's a single sheet. We did our best to try to give a complete summary in as few words as possible. And then we highlighted the key revisions, and then we tried to give a little key or a legend, if you will, on kind of how to understand what these changes really mean and kind of how they're going to specifically impact, on the ground, if you will. In all of these one sheets, we do show you here how to provide feedback, which is something that we are really trying to drive home. That's the goal 1 for the Oregon State land use goals, which is extremely important to us here at Wasco County. So we can back out of this here. And then just to kind of show you what these actual revised drafts look like. Well, chapter 2 is a little bit of an oddball here because there were so many changes to this kind of at such a fundamental level that trying to show the changes through a tracking was just kind of next to impossible.
Yeah,
So,
it would have made everybody's eyes and brains hurt. So that's sort of the odd one out. But if you pull up 21 or the EBDs, you can see what the normal revisions look like. And just to throw out there, this is the same model that we're going to approach for the next several years. So we hope that the fundamentals will start to look familiar, so it'll be easier to digest. So here's a copy of the revision notes that sort of explain what the big changes are.
So as you can see here, we include the page that the revision is on and the section that the revision or the proposed revision is taking place in. And then we give a brief description here on exactly what is trying to be changed. As we scroll down, you can actually see the text and how it is being changed from the original document to the proposed changes. So this is, again, an attempt at being as transparent as we can be, and in as least complicated of a way as we can try to present this information. Again, it can be a little bit challenging just with the sheer volume of changes that are going on and the nature of the language that we need to use here. But that's kind of the human element, right? That's what we are here for, and trying to get the public to engage with us on these things.
So I'm not seeing any more questions coming through. We've had a couple of people watching on Facebook, but no questions coming through. I know we have one participant watching the webinar. You can use the Q&A function to send us a question. We'll hang on here for a couple more minutes. And then Isaac's hovering over the Ask a Planner button that's on wasco2040.com. You can hit that and send us a question at any time, and we'll research the answer and get back to you. And it's really easy. It's a form. And we do require email because that's how we get back in touch with you. But you don't have to send us any more personal information. And that's been a really awesome function for us. So successful that we actually put it on the county website for our current planning program. So if you have current planning questions about your property, that's a good way to get those sent to us as well. Oh, comment. He's hovering over the comment button too, which is if you want to make a comment about any of the proposed revisions or make a comment about anything up and coming. That's another really easy web form. Again, you can just dash off a response to us, and then we ask you if you'd like to sign up for our notification list. We send those based on when there's major news or events upcoming. And just kind of, again, keeps you informed about the process and what we're up to.
And then the last plug that I want to give here is just the virtual open houses that we've tried to do here in lieu of not being able to hold in-person open houses. This last year and a half has been a little challenging, as everyone knows, and it's kind of getting almost tired of hearing about at this point. we really did try to give you a easy and digestible way to kind of look through these changes that are going on. In addition to the slide deck, it is narrated as well, so you can get a little bit more detailed information than just reading the information here. And always, we would love to hear any feedback from you guys on if these tools are useful. If they're not useful, what could we do to try to make them easier for you to use, or more informational?
Yeah,
if you're looking for different information.
If you scroll down, you can show them that all of these, the open houses have a special survey function built into them on the page that you can really easily send us feedback. And I think you bring up a really good point about our struggles this year with the lockdowns and restrictions on public gatherings and where we're looking to go in the future. So the county has resumed open doors for customer service. And I know the Board of County Commissioners is now having their meetings in public. But what we struggle with the Planning Commission is that we have a larger body. So instead of 3 commissioners, we actually have 9. And that means that the commission space where the Board of County Commissioner meetings are held is not adequate to accommodate our Planning Commission. And so we're having to look at other types of office space that can accommodate that large size, but also offer some of the hybrid approach, because we have found participation to be really great with these video conferences, especially for folks who maybe live far out or it's in the middle of their evening and maybe they can't get childcare. So we want to continue to take that hybrid approach, but we want to do it efficiently and effectively. So we're looking into spaces that can meet that hybrid model. We anticipate we're not going to be ready to go forward with that until the new year. We do anticipate next year that we're going to be able to go back out on the road and have a whole series of events where we can talk to people like we did with the comp plan. We really enjoyed meeting you all in public, getting to talk to you about these big issues, and share that in a presentation format, but also have some small group and large group discussions, and then also just get to talk one-on-one. So we'll be looking to do that next year. And I think that that's really critical because those issues are more optional. They're less mandatory. So there's probably a lot more for you to say, and we want to hear a lot more from you. So we'll have that opportunity again. I can also say that some components we really like. We love the virtual open house for the fact that it's on demand, and it tries to make the information interesting and easy to understand without you having to do a lot of reading. So we probably will maintain that format moving forward, so that you can just access it on demand. But so we really want to hear feedback about what worked and what didn't for you. And just know we're continuing to work really hard on ways to demystify what we're doing, make sure it's really clear what the changes are occurring, how it could impact you, help you make good informed decisions about how you want to participate in the process moving forward. I'm going to check Facebook one more time. I don't see any comments in the Q&A. And I'm not seeing any comments on Facebook. So we'll just remind everybody again, wasco2040.com is the project website for the Land Use and Development Ordinance update. Please visit us there. Check out the revised drafts, the one-sheet summaries, visit the virtual open houses. Utilize those Ask a Planner functions and the comment functions. We really can't stress enough that we really want to hear from you about these issues. It's very important to us to get that good community feedback to make informed decisions about things that impact you and your neighbors and your family. So with that, I think I'm not seeing any other questions. Isaac, anything else you want to address tonight before we close up for the evening?
I'll just try and underscore how important and necessary it is for the public to voice their concerns, their opinions, in their desires throughout this process. You know, these are in large part community driven, you know, in addition to state mandated, but it's really that intersection between the mandates and what the community is wanting to see how they're wanting to see their community grow. And that's kind of how I think that many other of us here feel. So you know, comment often, comment early, comment frequently. The more feedback we get, the better.
And I'll just, riffing on that, Isaac, I will just conclude that we have tried to make it really obvious in our drafts what's mandatory and what is optional, so that you know what to spend your energy focusing on. You're always welcome to comment on anything mandatory, but just know it is Wasco County direction to the planning department to follow state law. So um, there's likely little to no flexibility with some of those mandatory regulations, but we're happy to talk about them. We're happy to have conversations and get that feedback. But we also want you to spend energy where we really need you to spend energy, which are on those optional updates. So for those of you who are maybe most interested in the farm and forest updates, no, we're keeping those drafts that we were going to adopt this year. They're still up, they're still live, there's still surveys and things to participate. We're going to keep that going. We will have to at some point go back and revise those drafts with things that passed through the legislature this year, but we're going to be looking to do that likely in the winter this year and kind of going into 2022 to give us a little bit of time to catch up with this year's update. So if you're still interested in those, we want you to still stay plugged into that, still give us feedback. Just know we're going to be addressing it next year. And that's all I got today. Isaac, thanks so much for all your information. And thanks again to all the folks who plugged on, turned on, checked us out on the live stream. We really, really appreciate your participation, your involvement in our process, and want to thank you very sincerely for your help tonight. With that, I'm going to end our recording.